Forum, Inaya, Folarin, Eman. Great to have you both with us today. So train drivers are classed as working class. This is according to The Times today. What's happening here?
This is about a social mobility scheme for the civil service, I think, and who does or doesn't qualify for it.
Ooh, it's quite interesting.
It cuts to so much about English, British history, what class means. Does class still play a role? Should class have anything to do with recruitment to public service jobs or not? But the specific question is, are you working class or not if you are the son or daughter of a train driver, when train drivers stand in the near future, I think, to be earning as much as £80,000 a year? Apparently, you are working class, whereas if you're the son or daughter of a policeman or woman or a prison officer, then I think you're considered middle class, intermediate occupations.
This is so interesting.
Yeah.
It is so interesting.
And I think, you know, the median salary for, like, police officers is 40k, you know, half of what we're talking about for train drivers. So I think a lot of people will read that and think that that's unfair, that, for example, the children of train drivers can access a social mobility scheme that would perhaps potentially open doors for them, but another job that the parents may be financially less well off, they would not be able to benefit their children. But I think it goes back to what Matthew said. I think class can be quite complicated.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
not solely just about income, it's also about, you know, role, culture. And I think it is mysterious now, with the way that the economy has changed so much, to be able to just delineate what class people are.
Yeah, and it changes your life, I think, as well. It shouldn't just be on what your parents are.
No, indeed.
Like, and I speak this, my parents are teachers, so but it's like middle class, intermediate occupations. But then, you know, if you go to Oxford, if you work in a profession and all that kind of stuff, where do you end up? It's very confused, our
If
relationship
there is still
to it.
such a thing as class, and as you say, it should be flexible within a lifetime. I mean, my dad's parents were Austrian Jewish refugees, and they spoke German to each other, although not in front of the children. My dad went on to become a High Court judge.
Yeah, so
which
what
is
exactly?
at the centre of the establishment. I am a member of the MCC.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, there you go. That's upper class straight away.
I mean, you know,
That's the one thing we can all agree on.
I don't think, and I'm not sure I'm upper class.
No, I'm joking. That's a joke, by the way.
You see,
That's a joke.
But that's interesting, isn't it? My immediate reaction is to go upper class
Yeah,
and sort of
exactly.
rock backwards.
Yeah.
Well, you know, in the converse, you know, I speak to a lot of young people, you know, my friends and so on. You know, many of them have come from relatively privileged background, gone to great universities, and so are ostensibly middle or upper class, but they've kind of left university and are in kind of precarious, low-paid employment.
Yeah,
and
that's a very good point as well, because you can move the other way as well. It's a
exactly,
very good point.
and resent the fact that people don't tend to listen to their concerns because they think, oh, you've come from a privileged background, but actually the economic reality at the moment, due to the economy, is quite tough.
They'd love to be earning 80 grand, basically.
Exactly, exactly.
And then there is the question of, if you are, say, not the child of someone who's earning £80,000, but actually the person earning £80,000, can you be working class and earn that much money? I would suggest if class exists at all, then yes, you can, because it's not just about cash, is it?
Yeah, I would say no.
You would say
Oh,
no.
it's so interesting. I find this kind of stuff absolutely fascinating, and we are all kind of obsessed with it as well, aren't we?
One thing I would
British.
say is I think that we as a society should, and I hope this Labour government is moving in this direction, be much more respectful of people who do non-academic-y type jobs. Do you remember Tony Blair wanted to get 50% of the population to universities?
Well, they've dropped that, the Labour government.
The Labour government, I think, have dropped that and are moving a bit more to recognising apprenticeships as a really good way of moving forward into the world.
Particularly with AI. Sorry, I know we've been talking about this too long. again, but, you know, with AI as well, you know, all the sort of jobs that we used to think of as these, like, very sensible, smart careers, well, you know, it's going to be turned on its head, isn't it? And actually, maybe we need to start thinking more about, you know, train drivers,
and as parents, that's what we're thinking about, isn't it?
Well,
we're all parents, and we're all thinking now, what is the job market going to be like in 10, 15, 20 years' time?
Exactly. Right, we do need to move on. Let's go. The new Equalities Chief branded a disgrace by Conservatives.
Yes, indeed. So Mary Ann Stevenson, she's the new chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, replacing Baroness Faulkner. And she has essentially said that people that are raising awareness of the risks of immigration, that this is not necessarily something that should be done. And the Reform Party and the Conservatives have, of course, jumped on this, saying that this is disgraceful and this is demonising those that are raising, legitimate concerns about migration, particularly when this issue has become very salient. Some are perceiving this as essentially taking a political side in a contentious debate about immigration at the moment and reinforcing what some people feel, which is the kind of shutting down of discussions about some of the concerns they have around public services or social cohesion when it comes to migration.
Can we be clear about something? We might not agree with it. This is my view. Of course, we can have conversation about immigration and about numbers and about strain or help to public services and indeed about social cohesion. But that doesn't legitimise the targeting and the hate and the fear-mongering that we are seeing in some quarters of the media and in social media as well towards migrants, refugees, asylum seekers is absolutely disgusting. And that has real-world effects. The sorts of conversations I'm sometimes involved in on certain TV channels, that will have effects that will filter down to children growing up in our country. And there's just no excuse for it. So have an adult, grown-up conversation about it, but don't weaponise it.
Of course, and I think particularly with political leaders and people that have a public voice, they need to be very careful how they talk about migrants and refugees as absolutely human beings. But I think that the problem is that oftentimes people feel that any time they say anything critical of migration, then you always have someone jumping in and saying, well, refugees are actually, suffering this, or immigration's actually good, and there's always a kind of caveat which creates a climate where people feel like if they do talk about it, they'll be accused of being racist.
I think we're long past that point. We've been talking about immigration openly for years and years and years. It was right at the heart of the referendum debate, wasn't it? The referendum campaign.
But
we were
migration,
talking endlessly about it.
Well, not just talking about it, far from going down, it reached record levels under the final years of the Conservatives. So this actually ended up increasing the political salience of immigration. I think not tackling it, is actually what causes the kind of grievance and resentment.
But whether immigration is going up or down is irrelevant to the question of whether we're talking about it. And I'm saying we've been perfectly free to talk about it for years, if not decades.
Let's talk now about this special needs story. This is a story that I've been following quite closely, actually, and find very, very interesting as well. So this is the Daily Mirror, and it is Labour Minister Georgia Gould effectively criticising reform for talking about an overdiagnosis of special educational needs.
This has we're both interested in this. Yeah. This has a read over, doesn't it, from what we've just been talking about, because this Labour minister is really concerned about the real world impact of politicians talking about naughty children and bad parenting in the context of children with special educational needs. And I would say, yes, politicians do have a responsibility to be careful and to use evidence, but at the same time, I think you're going to say, and I do agree with this as well, that we shouldn't be afraid of having conversations about it.
And there's a real risk that, I do think there's a risk with some, that disagreement or taking a more robust approach when it comes to certain issues, they perceive that in and of itself as demonisation. And I don't think that that's particularly helpful. There are real trade-offs when it comes to the economy. We know that as difficult as it is to talk about, that the funding has been increased, and governments need to look at how to get to grips with this. And some people, including at one point Wes Streeting, Health Secretary, did say that there's potentially an overdiagnosis. And we need to be able to have that conversation without fearing that we're going to stigmatise and demonise.
I'm slightly confused by this, if I'm being completely honest, because as far as I'm aware, Labour are looking at special needs and saying they need to reform it because of the ballooning bill.
Exactly.
And you do talk to some people in Labour who point to the fact that if you're a middle-class parent, for example, then there's more people spending thousands of money and getting these kind of education certificates and stuff like that. So there's a concern about whether or not it's been used by middle-class.
I do think the tone matters, and that there is a place for tone, isn't there?
But I mean, if you think about Wes Streeting, bad parenting.
No, but to link bad parenting with children with special educational needs, you need to have very, very strong evidence before you start making those claims, in my view. But Wes Streeting recently, who was initiating this review into mental health, yes, he's going to, I hope, look at it robustly, but he talked about it in a way that wasn't going to upset people who are genuinely in need. And I think getting that balance right is important. It shouldn't be difficult.
Well, what I would just quickly add is that Reform are particularly known for so-called telling it as it is. So whilst it might offend a Labour minister, I think there will be many amongst their supporters that would like them being frank, at least in their interpretation, about this difficult
Telling it as it is, or putting out populist sound bites?
Oh, there we go. Let's just do the story now about boiling lobsters. So this is the Labour's animal welfare plan, and the Times picking up on their front page on the fact that boiling live lobsters and crabs is going to be banned by ministers under these reforms.
Indeed. So this is part of a kind of long-awaited animal welfare strategy. And as you mentioned, it has been announced that live boiling, and in relation to other crustaceans, not just lobsters, is going to be banned. And this is a follow-up from under the Tory government. They had essentially declared certain animals to be sentient and capable of experiencing pain. And I think that that's kind of opened the door to a bunch of reforms when it comes to how we deal with, animals, particularly livestock and things like that. There's been some criticism. I think farmers, in one of the other areas that they're looking at, has warned that scrapping cages for chickens and pigs could threaten British farming, especially when we're looking at like trade deals. If other countries, if we're going to be importing food with places that have lower welfare standards, are we then undercutting industries in the UK? We are an animal-loving country, and these things do matter, but there is sometimes worry about going too far, and I think this could be one of those things.
We're almost out of time, unless you've got anything burning to say.
We are animal lovers,
lobsters.
but unfortunately we also do treat animals very badly in the food system.
Yeah, and I guess this is the thing, if we're going to eat animals, we do have a massive responsibility on...
Not as badly
how
as
we
maybe
look
some
after
countries in Europe, by the way.
Yeah.
But we could do better.
Some unnamed countries who I think you can probably all know who we're talking about. Anyway, great to talk to you, as always.
Happy Christmas.
On the show. Merry Christmas.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?